Hey there, folks. John here, and this is the False Takes podcast, a show where we deal with art and film and the mistakes we all make along the way to creating something new. Today we have with us a special guest. We have Marc Meeks, and he is a key assistant location manager for a bunch of movies that you've heard of. So there he is. And then we also have Danny Corrales will be joining me as my co-host today. I think this is his first time on the show as well. But he knows Marc real well, so he's going to be doing a lot of the interview stuff. And then I'll be managing questions in chat and that sort of thing as we go. And just a reminder, we're going to ask Marc some questions here at the beginning, but do keep in mind you will have the opportunity to ask questions of him later. So as he's talking, think about those, write those down, put them in chat, and we will get those to him. So without further ado, I'm going to let Danny take it over. So go for it.
So, Marc, it's great to see you here, and thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Just tell us a little about yourself and how you got into the industry. And
the industry goes. I got into the industry technically, probably my first job in 1980, going all the way back to working at an ABC affiliate television station. I was still photographer of the station, studio cameraman, 610 News, KRGB, Westlaco, Texas. Could have stayed in television had I so choose to, but decided to go back to North Texas State University, which is now University of North Texas, and got into film classes there, film studies. Decided I want to go into motion picture. Electronic cinematography was not a thing yet, but I took a class in a special class in Dallas. Came back, told the general manager of the TV station I think want to move back into film, and he said good luck. And so off I went off to North Texas State, the abbreviated version.
Yeah.
Met guys that are still close friends of mine in my life. We all ended up caravanning out to Los Angeles, and then I just moved through a whole series of positions doing different types of work up until now. So, and that was a long time ago, and you can probably tell from looking at me, it was a long time ago, so I'm not going to tell you when it was. I'll just say that the Bengals and Duran Duran was very big.
So you started off, you went to LA, really you wanted to be, and you are a writer, but you started off, that was your main goal. Could you talk about that journey as a writer and then how you transitioned?
Well, it wasn't necessarily my main goal. And that was probably, a lesson to be learned is know what you want to do early and stick to it. I had thoughts about being a writer, and I had written short stories and just all the things that how you inspire yourself to writing in general. Your own imagination, want to create stories. And I went out there, but when you first get out there, it's just survival. So you just want to get a job in the industry, which I did, answering phones at a production company, and leaving, coming back to that production company. This is at a time when the home video market was just exploding, with foreign sales and the 80s action films and all that kind of stuff.
There was a thing called Blockbuster. Remember, there's Blockbuster video.
Well, this at Blockbuster, all the video stores, they were all over. They were all there was in terms of getting movies outside of whatever the network showed on TV. So, but that being said, I got in the industry still writing, but still working, not 100% sure of what I wanted to do, because my initial interest and passion was photography / cinematography. But I didn't have those relationships or that means at the time to kind of facilitate that. But I had other friends that were writing. We were all writing. All the guys that came out from college, from film school, we were all writing scripts because that's where it's at. But I got a job with a production company, and so I was reading scripts, taking notes, kind of learning from that. It was all low budget fare, some fairly larger size productions that we got involved with. But I was doing marketing, shipping, post-production, facilitating post-production material. It was all prints and advertising for servicing a foreign market. And that went on for like 3.5 years. And then I decided, I think I will get more committed to writing. And I had a friend, we collaborated on projects. I went back to Texas, spent about, I think, 8-10 months putting a project together. Never came to fruition. Went back, got hired by the same company. I stayed with them a few months and then left. While doing other things along the way, going back to summer of '93, I was a video assist tech. Before that was really a big thing, when video assist was just becoming, now we call it DIT, but that wasn't as big as it is now. But I probably learned more about filmmaking from that one job than all of the film school I had before that, because it was seeing all the footage shot from 2 to 3 cameras, steady cam, all this stuff from beginning to end, playing it back there with the director. I was actually driving. It was an independent show, so I was actually the driver for the director and the first AD every morning. So I listened to them talk about how the day's going to go. We drive out there. I jump in. Now I put on a different hat. Now I'm the video assist tech, and I go into the camera truck, get all my gear out. I didn't know what I was doing. One of the camera guys showed me how the monitors and the equipment works. Figured it out pretty quick, and off we went. One of the most beneficial experiences of my life. You really get to see, then you see the finished product. You see what was edited, what was, how the movie turned out, and that I don't know if I've had necessarily a job since then where I've learned as much in a shorter period of time as being a video assist tech. It's almost like being the film editor. Right. You're seeing, getting all the footage coming in through you, and you're seeing what was necessary, what was unnecessary, stuff was overshot. Why are we doing this setup? All this kind of stuff. You learn all that. That was kind of my
introduction into the film world.
I would say that was like of all of my film school training, that was probably the cherry on the cake, kind of thing. And then other stuff, but the industry is so broad. It's not just, when you say the industry, it's everything. It's everything from, agents and actors and deals being done and producing and post-production. And it's just so vast of what is the industry, So I've been fortunate that I've had my foot in a lot of different aspects of the industry, from distribution, production, writing, and a lot of people will be surprised, because you'll have, I was fortunate that I managed to stay in the industry, period. Not necessarily doing exactly what I wanted to do, but I've certainly, none of it would have happened at all had I not gotten in the car and just went to Los Angeles, and just got out there. And then you meet relationships, and then and what you do with it once you're there, like with the writing, I didn't write the one movie that got made through Warner Brothers by myself. It was co-written, the David Spade Project, and had J.B. Cook a part of it. It was his connection, the stand-up comedy world. And Spade had big management at the time, and an agent, and I won't say it was glamorous. It wasn't, but it was interesting to be at that level, and having conversations, sitting in the room with these people that are kind of top tier agents and managers. You go through all these conversations, and in the end, they know what they know, which is different than what you know. They know how to contract deals, put deals together, looking out for their clients. But if you've got the creative mind, you wield the power. Even over actors, because they have material to act with. So it was interesting, never intimidating. It's kind of self-empowering when I came out of it. It's like all of this stuff. I'll go as far as I want to go. long as I really apply myself. So now I'm kind of getting through my writing thing.
Yeah.
This is the late 90s. But with that, the nature of the industry is that the reason one movie got made was because we had things attached to it. We had an actor, and that got more actors. We had a director, we had a producer, and we went through 2 or 3 different directors. That was a bit of an aggravating process, but that is the process, period, for people in the industry, dealing with different viewpoints, have a creative take on your material. But at that point, you don't own it anymore. That property was sold. You're kind of there as a guest. It's like your child. Somebody else adopts your blood child,
right. Which is
and you're allowed to come over and visit him,
right,
and have some influence. But there's another man who's now the father of my child or my son. That's kind of how it feels when another production company takes over your property, and contractually you have some obligation to it still, but the ultimate say-so is theirs. A little aggravating. Finished product isn't what we had hoped it had turned out or had started to be, but it was still a valuable process any way you look at it, regardless of finished product. So I spent another year or 2 with different ideas together. Myself and JB, I think one other project, he kind of had an avenue open to him through connections with stand-up that took him another direction. I didn't want to do romantic comedy material. Probably should have stayed, both of us, in that genre for at least a little while. But I had other more, I don't say loftier, but just more personal desires, in terms of what I wanted to write and the type of material that I wanted to create and stuff. And so I went to one project after another, pitch after pitch. You pitch your brain out and you take general meetings. But if you're going in to rooms with nothing attached to that pitch other than you, it's probably not going to happen. That doesn't mean it won't, but it's probably not. After a while, you start getting a little burnout. A few small deals after that come your way. But then your manager, your agent's like, I'm trying. I had another project. I was attached to adapt a book, a Robert Cormier book called Spade, that we're very hopeful about. A lot of strong creative differences on that one, so to speak, ended up not coming to fruition. Then you start feeling, do I really want to be a writer? This also came right at a time when it was just short of getting married, and ended up getting married. My first son's born, and I need money. To not get too deep into a backstory, but people I knew did location management. Okay. Opportunities came up to kind of get my foot in the door doing site repping for location services, which you deal with between a property owner or a high-rise office tower downtown LA and the production companies while I was still writing.
Right.
There's a bit of some overlap, and I end up moving into about 15 years ago, moving into location management, essentially. Jordan, you took me about a year. So a year before that, I'd already made the overtures to get in the union, but it's a waiting list like all the unions. And then the list has to get really low. Like there's so much work that there's hardly anybody on the availability list for the unions, whether it's grip electric locations, we're Teamsters, so drivers, all that kind of stuff. It's just, you protect your union members first. Then if the opportunities there to join, they always want new members, but they can't put their own members out of work. So then it took me about a year. It was on the Kill Bill set that I was inspired by that location manager, a guy named Doug Dresser, to try getting in the union, or it's somebody I should probably think about. I started talking to all the crew, the construction coordinator and the labor foreman, all these guys about how much better their life was once they got in the union. I'm thinking, they get paid a check every Thursday, got the best health insurance in the country. It's certainly taken a lot of anxiety out of my life because I've run out of my writing money. So it took about a year. I finally got the call. Started on a show. We did the pilot for a television series called The Unit. The location manager from that show called me up, who I'd worked with when I was site repping, a guy named John Johnston, who did the show 24. In the off season of 24, and during the hiatus is when the pilot season typically is, spring through the early summer. And he called me up, did that, did the unit, did part of the series.
Give me an example of like, what is your job like on the unit, and where did you feel like you kind of, because you just now started, you knew a little bit about location managing from what you did in your previous gig, but tell me about that transition in the unit, and what were your duties? And
well, here's the deal with it. There's every department has a tiered system,
right?
Of seniority. So we have a 3-tiered system in the location department in Los Angeles as team service. There's the assistant manager, key assistant location manager, key assistant location manager, and location manager. Some cities, you can be both. You can be location manager. If there's, depending on the work, you can do assistant managing. They don't really have a key position. It's just assistant. Some other cities I've worked like that. And then other cities like Los Angeles, because the extent of production is so vast. There's so much production. You can't have, or they don't want a certain tier of people monopolizing all the work. So you kind of have to go through a long stretch of time. Once you move up to a location, I can jump back and forth between manager and from key assistant to assistant. But once you go to location manager, you have to wait almost a year without work before they'll let you go back down. So, but the good news is we can negotiate our salary basically for that show. So you can negotiate higher, like I negotiate higher than the standard rate, which brings me up. Certainly when I'm out of town, I make more than a manager would make in Los Angeles, but not as much as a manager on a feature, because they're all negotiating the rate. So you tier up on your rate for that show. And either that show has the money to pay your rate or they don't. But I wanted to get in my 15 years, so my insurance started to become solid for me and my wife in our retirement, which I'm close. But getting back to your original story about the unit, I started as an assistant. I didn't know what I was doing. Now, I did have exposure to a lot of film production when I was site repping. I did, I think, 90 productions as a site rep in Los Angeles, big shows. During that time, that was, let's see, going back, we're talking I'd site repped I site repped early to mid 90s, and then came back to early 2000, and then I went into the union. During that time, I probably did maybe 90 productions from 2 different companies, 180 different shows. So by the time I'd come as an assistant, I have that. I already know mostly what these guys are doing, at least when they're on a set, what their job duties entail. But I didn't know behind the scenes what it took to get, by the time a production lands at a location, all that it took to get there. So that was new to me, and they kind of, you're kind of cast into the fire. What's
your typical day like? So tell me, like on the unit, for instance, and on 24, like what were you doing?
Well, you want to start off an assistant for those of you that are thinking about location management. They're not going to give you too much work to do too soon. So they'll probably start you, they might have you doing a little scouting if they think you really know the area and can, have input, some creative input. But they'll probably have you as a set closer, because we'll overlap our time. So who puts how many hours in for the day. So the assistant, you'll train him to close the set. So if you've got a 12-hour day and a key assistant or a manager came in to open that set at 4 in the morning, or 5. They're not going to stay till the wrap at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
or 9 or 8,
Yeah.
So they're going to put in 11, 12 hours, and the assistant will come in later. He'll start later in the day, later that morning, and he'll carry till wrap and make sure that that location is wrapped out properly. Because it's not just, okay, let's walk away from the equipment. A lot of stuff has to be buttoned up, and whether the company's going to make a move to go to another location that day or night, or whether they're coming back, there's still a lot of issues that the set closer needs to address to make sure that when the company comes back or wherever they go to, when they get out that night, that everything's been addressed. And depending on the level of production that day, all that went into it, whether it could have been an easy dialogue day and the company starts doing some pre-wrapping of equipment, so the trucks are pretty ready by the time they wrap, making sure they get out of a neighborhood or any location where they're at. It could be a ranch, whatever it is. There's stipulation to everything in Los Angeles. You have time frames on your permit. You have to be tail lights at a certain time. Could be 2 a.m, could be midnight, it could be 10 p.m. And you want to make sure that's all adhered to, that drivers aren't keeping, or even ADs or like assistant director or the PAs and the second AD that will like sit on the set and they may do background extras vouchers and want to do it there without having to leave. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, we've got to get out of here. You need a set closer who like kind of polices the set and make sure and ushers everybody out of the location at the appropriate time, and they're gone. Everything's wrapped out properly. It could be the set being put back into condition. Certain aspects of the set need to go back just for that night before the restoration crew comes the next day. And it's all that kind of stuff. So you start somebody that way, and then usually the key is responsible for kind of mentoring those assistants along the way, because usually the manager's in the office or he's in a van jumping ahead, trying, put the next locations together and put a budget together. And then, so the key kind of mentors everybody. He's in between. He's like as a construction site, he would be the on-site foreman to get a sense of, and then you got a construction coordinator who's in a trailer and he may be going back and forth, and he dresses a little nicer, but the job foreman's down there overseeing his work. And so that's kind of probably the most appropriate analogy in terms of work duty. But that's what the assistant does. And then when you go up to key, then you'll get more heavy into the scouting. You'll get into negotiating. You don't want your entry-level people doing money deals. Unless they're there as a messenger, you tell them, can you go to this person, offer them this much money, don't offer them a dime above this, that kind of thing. They're largely playing a messenger role. But as the key gets out there and negotiates all the deals, he'll negotiate or he'll make the arrangements with the utility companies, fire departments, police department. The list goes on and on, depending on what's required at any given location. And all of that information is essentially generated, given to the location manager. What are the dollar signs of all these things they're going to cost? Location manager starts putting it into a budget. The key usually starts tracking that money. He's got his own budget and he'll be putting it all together as well. But there's a lot to do. Aside from the aspects of the film permit that need to be sufficed, police, fire, Department of Transportation, moving buses, getting lane closures with barricade companies, all of that kind of stuff. You have to generate information from all of your production departments, camera, grip, electric, especially the art department, transportation department, construction comes under art. What they need are they going to do at that location? A lot of this information will be generated on a technical scout, and you'll get your 25 to 35 people that go out and see all the locations before official first day of principal photography begins. Go out and look at all those locations, generate as much information as they can. Of course, they're not going to come to all the answers and conclusions right there on the spot. They have to see it and think about it. Usually the location department and the production designer, art director, have seen these locations in advance. They've done some preliminary scouting with the director. So by the time that location's chosen by the director, you start getting some feedback already from the art department. They'll be putting some plans together. They'll probably have gone back to these locations, already done some measurements. So when we do a technical scout, we get a booklet we put together, and it has that location for each location. And the art department put together director's plans, like a blueprint of the set, what they want to build. And it's very valuable to the location department, because now you're going to take all this information and go to the property owner and say, here's what we want to do. Meanwhile, and then as you say that, Grip and Electric have gone back and figured out their lighting plans, and they'll come up with some stuff that wasn't discussed on the tech scout. So a good key is in constant communication with them. What are you going to do at this location? How's it going to be lit? If it's a night shot, are we bringing in conduit cranes? Are we bringing in BB lights? How are we going to light it? Do we need to change out, all of the old street lighting to LED? Are we going from LED? Are we shooting 70s, 80s, 90s? Are we going back to sodium vapor? And then you got to deal with the city and make arrangements for a bucket truck. It could be our own people that go up there. It's just all that kind of stuff. You're constantly generating information from all the departments, even hair and makeup. They're at base camp or on set. They're gonna tweet people. They have to dress people. What are their requirements? What are their needs while they're at a location? Location department has to provide that. Now, of course, transportation department will be bringing in a makeup and hair trailer, but that's just for principals. The principal actors, they'll get made up in those trailers, so their own trailer, but all those other people are going to be done in a facility or a tent that the location department provides. So you got to know how many makeup and hair stations you need. You make sure there's power for them. Power is always a big thing on a set. But you've got production and everything they need at every location in one hand, and you've got the city and that jurisdiction and the location and all of their issues in your other hand. And you're just constantly doing this, going back and forth, addressing the issues between both of those two worlds, the production world and your location world, So there's always a lot to do. And after a while you get, you're always taking down notes. We need this, parking, making sure transportation department has the space they need to bring the circus to that location. We provide the bathrooms, trash. If you're doing interiors, floor protection, wall corners protection, all these are all vendors we bring in, make these arrangements, to hire to make sure that everything goes smooth, no damages, or at least as little as possible. And those are your vendors. So there's actually three worlds. There's this production world. There's everything to do with the permit and the location. Then you have your vendors who are going to provide services for that location. They go through the location department as well. And you do that every day.
When you talk about vendors, you're talking about catering? Is that what you're...
No. A vendor is, like I said, it's floor protection.
Okay, I got you.
Do layout board, do floor runner, all that kind of stuff to protect, let's just say a house, air conditioning. It's gonna get hot in there, so you have to bring in portable air conditioning, 10-ton, 20-ton, 30-ton units, 50-ton units, 5 tons. Part of that tech scout, when you look at, you determine what you need. A good key knows what air conditioning is going to be required for the house, as well as how are you going to get all those air conditioning tubes into a set and not be seen. Bring it in, have somebody dedicated who's going to pull those tubes at windows or doors. Do we need air conditioning at all? With generators for transportation, where's the generators going to go? Where are they going to park? Who are they going to impact? Are they going to be in front of homes? Are they going to be in front of businesses? You're going to have to go do all the buyout deals if you're shooting on a city street in a heavy retail zone. You might have easily 20 to 35 businesses we have to make individual deals with. We're not required to, but we do, out of good faith, show we don't want them to lose money.
Right.
So do deals with churches, with schools for parking, all kinds of.
Can you give an example of like what one of those deals might look like with like one of those businesses?
It depends on the city, depends on the area of town you're at, but let's just say on average $500
Per business?
for the day, for a day. We'll say a 12-hour period. Let's say I'm going to put a 40, 45, 48 footer rig that's going to take out 6 meters, 6 parking spaces or 7, 8 parking spaces in front of 2 to 3 stores on a Monday through Friday on Ventura Boulevard. The compensation for that owner could really vary. It can be as low as depending on when they open during the day. Some stores don't open until 10 or 11 a.m. Some will open. If it's a restaurant, you're going to pay them more because they're there for you're hurting their breakfast crowd, their lunch crowd. Sometimes we just buy out people. It could be a restaurant. We just buy them out completely, and I'll hold my background actors. If I've got 35 background or 50 or 70, and I would put them in that restaurant that's half a block down from our shooting location. So the assistant director department, the PAs, can have a place for holding close to set without having to drive them back to base camp or somewhere. So your deals fluctuate. One restaurant might get $2,500, and the store right next to it might get $350. There are really no set numbers. When you go into an economically depressed area, the numbers will go down. They don't generate that much money. So you kind of base it on that. When you do a deal with a home, say we're shooting in a interior, exterior, sometimes it's just exterior, but you still need some degree of control inside. Sometimes you're shooting both. You can shoot interior and only downstairs of a 2-story house and not upstairs, and the homeowners can stay there. Sometimes we're shooting both floors and we have to put them in a hotel. So those rates fluctuate location to location based on the overall level of impact. Some people will get more, some people will get less. There's not really a set amount. It'll never be $50. $50 is usually what we pay to plug in electricity to a house or a business that we need for the camera truck to keep the batteries charged. It would $50, maybe $100, but that's kind of not that important right now. But it's just the numbers are all over based on city and location.
Now, Mark, you're a very creative guy, and you like to shoot a lot of photography, and that's one of the beauties of being a location scout, that I see you're constantly taking your camera out and saying, kind of always archiving different locations. And I know that you did Man of Steel, and you went scouting particular locations. Can you talk about how you did that and how you took photos? And
well, that's part of the appeal. Well, I got in to begin with because, like I said, when I first started, photography was my principal interest. And I was a photographer for a TV station, shooting local ads, still photography for ads, and local clients. And then I went to film school. When the opportunity to get in locations and the fact that they scouted and used to utilize a camera was, I thought, fantastic. We're an autonomous department compared to all the other departments. We're out on our own. We set our own time schedule. We know what needs to get done during that day. And you may have it all knocked off by 2 p.m., or you may go 4 or 5 days and still not find what you're looking for. You could go a couple of months and not find what you're looking for, but you've gone through extensive scouting during that entire period. But having the camera and being able to get paid, get to go take photos, be it of landscapes for exteriors or housing. So a lot of it can get boring. I need to go photograph a dentist office, things like that. We need parking lots. We need roads. But you want to have the scene. You want to have the script. You want to see what it is you need. You'll get a sense of the coverage you need with your camera, how to cover with your camera any given location, so directors aren't clueless as to the real layout of that location, its practical size, not going to extreme wide angle lenses, not getting so deep and so close. The pictures are disconnected, that all your photos connect and they're easy for them to get. You get where it comes fairly easily. So the camera is largely beneficial. I like the fact that we go out, and many times the locations that we find in a movie, those locations themselves become the movie. They're integral part of how you think about that movie. Locations, the set you saw, oh, that was a cool set. That was where was that at? Finding the tone, locations that fit the tone. This will all come from the production designer for the most part, but you're providing him things that he can latch onto. He'll either expand on it or say, yeah, that's perfect, or it isn't ideal, but it fits the schedule. We need a place to go for the second part of the day, this day, that fits this. I can make this work. So it varies, but I see stuff that people don't really think about it, what goes into just finding a location, but a lot goes into it.
Yeah, for instance, you find a location that you're saying, okay, this looks great, but from a practical perspective, I can't shoot here because I can't put grip trucks here. Have you ever run into that issue?
Oh yeah, all the time. Parking is a big part of it. And it's like, well, how are we going to shoot this? Could be a home. It could be something. It could be just a challenging home that the director likes. But then when you get there, it's like, well, how do we practically service the location with the trucks that need to get close? The big trucks don't have to be that close. You can bring in what we call the stake beds, where everything goes off the 40 footers, go down to a smaller stake bed trucks, top kick pickups, we call them, and then or they can go into shorty 40s, which are like cube trucks, and bring them in. How are we going to get the equipment up there when we don't have any parking? It can be worked out inevitably. Is a producer and director willing to take the time? You might have to invest a whole nother day in that location just based on the time you're going to lose. What would normally be maybe an easy location to film all those scenes, a one-day shoot, you may have to make it 2 days, just because you're going to lose so much time going up into the top of Bel Air when your base camp's down somewhere in West Hollywood or Beverly Hills. That's a long travel time to take actors back and forth to base camp or to getting down to where the equipment trucks are at. So those are practical considerations that you just address when you're there. It may be too difficult. It may not be. In locations, we like to think everything's doable. We cringe when we see people a director latching on to something that we know is going to be challenging. And we have other options that we know would be what we think is the equivalent in terms of a good location that's easier to facilitate, great parking. Murphy's Law says they're not going to pick the easy one. It's going to be the most challenging. But that's okay. I kind of like proving to the world that we can do it. Proving to our producer we can do it. And the people that really want it, that director or production designer, if they really want it and they're willing and they know, and you communicate to them what is going to be required to pull this location off. Once they latch onto it and say yes, it doesn't matter about all of the complaints you're going to get from production and the people who are going to complain about having to push their carts up a hill or do this or do that. The most powerful people said, let's do it. So our job is just to make it happen.
Let's talk about, this is great, but I want to talk about the creative aspects, because you're a very creative guy, and you get a script and the producer probably goes over like the tone if they want the location to look like. And I know you brought some things like to the table with Mindhunter. Can you talk about like the locations you found there and what was difficult about it and what was satisfying from a visual perspective, because it's a period piece? And the difficulty.
Visually, when the thing with Mindhunter was shot in Pittsburgh and around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When you go out of town, it's a little different than when you were in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, I feel like that's my comfort zone.
Right.
So when you go out of town, there's already location people there that live there. There's a location manager. There's other assistants. There's other scouts. So now there tends to be Um, Sometimes some attitude when people come in from out of town. It's like, don't tell us what's in our town and what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
We have our way of doing things, whether it's Pittsburgh or whether it's Boston or New York, wherever you're at. There becomes like a method to things. But the reality is, we're a union show. We're based out of Los Angeles. That's where the money comes from. We're here. And the guys coming out of LA typically will have the seniority. Like the supervising location manager who might oversee 2 location managers and 9 key assistants and 11 regular assistants and scouts that come and go and all that kind of stuff. So with Pittsburgh, a lot of those locations, they'd already shot half of a season when I first came on the first time. So those locations were already set locations, set pieces that were already built in some factory sets in Pittsburgh. So a lot of it was me working the location. I think the first season I may not have scouted for anything. I don't remember. Second season, coming back, I was on for the entire duration of the show, from like January 4th to December 4th, something like that. And then there was more scouting involved with that. We had so many locations at that point too. The local team pretty much entrusted that I'm going to go find. I know the city well enough by now. I'm going to go find what we need, and did. I'm also the kind of person that I have a wanderlust anyway. So whether I'm not working, I just love getting out and exploring. I want to know the world that's around me. I want to know the history of it. What was the progress of the city over time economically? You get where you can almost, and then you got Google Earth, which is a big thing we use substantially now. You go in and you start, even before you go out the front door of the production office that morning, you start Google Earthing things that you think, areas that you think have possibilities. You've got the script, you go out, and it could be stuff that maybe an existing location from a previous season that didn't get used, but now has potential for this new season or another episode that you go back to. You can go back and now finally film it and go, hooray. The people really, they were really bummed that we didn't film there the first season, but now we're back and we're filming there this season. Or 2 episodes later. Everything you shoot is, because we don't know what's getting written. We don't know what's coming down the pipe from a creative perspective, what the writers have going on in their head. So you're only you're 1 to 2 episodes ahead. If that, sometimes you're getting an outline and you'll base your scouting on that outline. The outline can change drastically, but everything you shoot is a potential filming location. Even when I'm not working and I say I go out on the weekends and I just travel, I shoot stuff because I want to have a visual reference of that world, because it could come back around to me in my work. So, and we use it as reference material. Architecture is a big part of location management and scouting, which is being able to communicate with a production designer about styles. He throws out a certain style. He goes, "Give me good international style office building," whatever the look and tone of that show is, and you got to know what he's talking about. Any production designer is going to appreciate a location manager that can communicate on an architectural scale with them. So they go, "What? What do you mean?" And then you show them reference photos of stuff you're scouting. It's like, this is not the directive I gave for you guys. This is like completely off. No, do you not know what I'm talking about? So it's largely beneficial to know architecture, photography, software. Nowadays, Lightroom's pretty popular. It doesn't have to be. Our union hall, the good thing about our union hall in Los Angeles, they have training classes for all this stuff, from everything from management from budgeting to scouting to processing photos to architecture classes. I've taken those to just make you a more well-rounded location manager.
Are there any specific resources that you would point to and say, hey, if you're just getting into this, these 2 or 3 things would really help you get acclimated to location managing, help you in securing locations, anything like that. Any kind of
There
tools
really
you used
isn't.
or anything like that?
There's not. Unfortunately, there really isn't. So other than talking with people, like if someone says, hey, we have this project, it's kind of fairly large projects coming to town, and they're looking for local people to scout it, there's not much I can depart to a local scout because I don't know his town. I can maybe have some pointers on how to scout if he hasn't done it before with this camera. And then if that production coming in, that location manager, producer, depending on the size of the show, wants to keep that person on that local to the duration of the show, and that person is still doesn't want to ask too many questions, he doesn't sound like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he wants to talk to somebody behind the scenes, then he needs to talk to another location person, or the other, just talk to the location manager who hired him to begin with. And just ask all the questions. What do I need to be doing here? What responsibilities will I be allocated that I need to know about? And it's that manager's job to provide that information to them. But there's not like a portal you can go on to, and like there's a website here that trains you to be a location manager. There probably should be something that even if some website you go on and that breaks down all of the minutia of the day-to-day tasks from a location manager to an assistant. If there is, I don't know about it, but that's what our union, at least in Los Angeles, tries to fulfill with all of our meetings. There's instructional classes that we have that tries to fill that void. It's safe to say that when you work in Los Angeles and you work, especially if you go back and forth between feature and TV, but definitely in television network programming, this is a world that moves very, very fast. You have to find locations fast. Decisions have to be made fast. Permitting has to be done fast to make it within that 2 to 3 days of allocated time in Los Angeles. That your permit has to be in with most of the relevant information on there. You can add to it as you go. And it's a scramble, and it's stressful. When I first started, this is why you want to ease into it. You don't give an assistant that much stress and too much more responsibility. It was kind of a good thing. I actually had a lot of responsibility put on me on the unit than I should have. People come and go. Everybody in the production world moves around a lot. They get an offer to go out of town. That's more money. They leave. It could be anybody. It could be locations. Could be an art director, somebody in transportation, or it just could be, it won't be the DP, won't be the top key people. They can't walk off a show. But typically people tend to leave closer to the end or right at the very beginning. They're pretty good about, just out of sheer principle, staying in the bulk of all that filming and so everything goes smooth. But people leave at all times. I know I worked on a show. I can't remember how many art directors we've gone through, and it's like, who am I dealing with now? And then that person comes in. Oh, this person's great. And just when you get in sync with them, that person has. You say you've got for that episode. Say you've got 4 locations, 5, and that art director, assistant art director, then they're gone. And it's like it happens all the time. Sometimes some shows more than others, but for the most part, people try to stay to that core filming without walking away and leaving too much responsibility on their department head. And the department heads, to kind of get a sense of protocol and stuff, the department heads they all communicate on their level, just as a general stereotype. Department heads all communicate on their level. The next people down all communicate on their level, and it's kind of tiered, it's militaristic in that way. A location manager deals directly with the production designer, and they'll deal directly with the producer, or it could be transportation coordinator, it could be the gaffer, the key grip, and things like that. That's all the top tier people. but then the key will deal with the second and the first AD, location manager, and then the second tier down, the key assistant deals with the second assistant director and best boy grip, best boy electric, rigging electric, and then there's that tier. And so it kind of goes down. But when you're on a show and everybody gets to know each other, you can pretty much deal with anybody. You know, I can have those conversations with a director of photography, production designer. It's usually just not quite in the beginning. It's kind of like once everybody's gone through the nitty gritty together, whatever information needs to be extracted gets extracted by anybody. And most department heads just want to get it done properly. So there is kind of a tier to that. And then once everybody knows each other, you can kind of go up and back and forth on the tier and talk to whoever you need to talk to.
Now, don't you also, Mark, directors, famous directors have actually come and talked to you about, hey, this is what I want for a location. That's been the case before in the past.
Sure. So what you'll deal with, so especially like on a big feature, every key assistant's the de facto location manager for that location, because he may be on it for 4 months. He may have 5 locations for the whole movie, but they're big locations. There's a lot of work that goes into them. So he may prep for 4 to 5 months. So when a director or DP wants to know specific things about what he can achieve at a location, like, well, who knows the most about the location? And that's usually the key assistant. The location manager can get it to him as well, too. And sometimes that's the case. Or it's both at the same time, or it's a sit-down meeting. There's a lot of meetings. So most of this information, when you say generating information, it goes through emails. You really don't want to do too many verbal phone calls, because you always want to have backup. Remember this conversation we had through this email and you responded? I was like, I don't remember that conversation.
Nice to have.
Now, you want a paper trail. You want a clean paper trail, but they have production meetings all the time. We have transportation meetings. We have logistics meetings, which is one of the most important with the first AD and second AD. And in those logistics meetings, we talk about every location. And it may take 3 days of logistic meetings. Every location for that show that you're going to deal with. And it's logistics, it's lighting, it's parking, it's what are the camera views, what is safe for parking, what's the camera going to see, where are we holding, and the assistant director department has to also, along with locations, take all this information, figure out how they scheduled the day. Okay, where's holding? Well, holding's going to be, we don't have anything close. It's going to be at base camp, and they're going to have to drive, and that's a 10-minute, could be a 20-minute rounder, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back. They have to factor that into their scheduling. This, so
for people that don't know
one example.
For people that don't know what holding is, can you just
background? Let's say if I've got 50 people on set that are supposed to be the background actors, walking up and down sidewalks or sitting in a restaurant or in a parade scene or whatever it is, you have to put them somewhere, and they get their own food and beverage through craft service separately. But they have to be. You want them to be somewhere close to set. Typically, you'll find some place. You might even be able to put up a tent. But depending how big the overall footprint of what camera's seeing is, the set itself, you may have to put them farther away. The ADs want to know, where is base camp? How long does it take to make those rounders? When we show up in the morning and have breakfast at base camp, how long does it take to get to set? And then to get back to base camp again and take people back and forth to set? Where are all the working trucks going to park? Because that will dictate how fast equipment gets to camera and back and forth or not. Those are the logistic issues you work out with all those individual meetings we constantly have. And the location department will put schematics together, and you'll provide them to assistant directors, use second AD. First AD is always CC'd on all the department heads are CC'd on all this stuff. And you put some extensive schematics of, here's the footprint for filming, here's where we're allowed to be, here's where we're not allowed to be, here's where base camp's going to be, here's where catering's going to be, here's where craft service are set up, here's where the working trucks are going to be. It could be lighting positions, here's the generator's going to be, so it's not too close to camera, so we don't have any sound issues. That schematic will be a visual representation of all the information you've generated from those departments to those last few days or weeks. And they go, okay, I got it. And they'll take it with them to set. Might even be attached to the back of the crew map. So So even crew members have a visual reference of where everything's at instead of just being told. So the location department will provide that for them as well.
Okay. We have a question from chat. Do you have a story about a location that was particularly hard to, you don't have to name the location by name, but a story about a location that was like particularly hard to secure, and how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, there's been a few. I would say probably the one that took the longest so on a movie, I'll say it. It was called I Love You, Man. And we had a house, what we called the Hero House. That's our two lead actors. And the initial script was written for a Spanish bungalow, and that was my location. And I spent at least 3 months scouting, 2.5 to 3 months for the Spanish bungalow. Occasionally, I would throw a little modern in the mix. I remember there was a little white house I threw in as a modern into the mix. The director would have creative meetings, production, location manager, production designer, art people, director, producer, and they would look and they say, this house, kind of in the running. The director's still not crazy about any of this stuff, and so the director, so production designer, would come back, sit down, usually at my desk, or I go to sit at his desk. Here's some other ideas, and then they'll begin to augment. The production designer is trying to figure out the director too. His job is to make the director happy. Our job is to make the production designer happy. And by doing that, you're making the director happy. So that one, this scout for this house went on. I think in my files, I got into 65 houses around Los Angeles, Spanish. One modern I threw into the mix just to see if it would generate a response. And that's the one house the director responded to. They went to go see it, but it was too small. But now we know the director and the production designer actually likes more of a modern mid-century thing is what he's leaning to. Okay, we find some other moderns. We go down, we even do a big director scout with like 15, 20 other people at this house. And it could work, but it doesn't quite work visually for what that director, John, wanted to do. How to stage the actors, the camera, and all this stuff. We're going to have to build a bedroom. And no one was really happy with what we had. So I'm on my own time. It was a Sunday morning. We're going down to the wire because I don't want to have to take the crew to this house up in Silver Lake, which I know is going to be a real problematic location to shoot. But it's all we've got. And you don't want to give the director and production designer and producer something that is all you've got. It's our default house. So I kept looking and looking. One Sunday morning, I'm sitting at the computer and I went on to, I think it was on Flickr. We went through real estate sites. The other location manager, Peter Novak, was like, we're going to real estate online, the newspaper, anything with homes that were for sale that might be a good match for what we're looking for. A Sunday morning, I was on Flickr. I used keywords, Los Angeles, mid-century moderns, all this stuff. And this one house pops up. And fortunately, this guy had put a little geotag to where the house was. And it said it was real close to where I lived, a mile and a quarter away. And I said, no, there's no way. I've blanketed this location backwards and forward so many times, I'm numb to it. I was in my underwear, threw up my clothes, and I got to go see where this house is. So I drive up there, and there's a stretch of road that goes up. I won't say exactly where it's at. You cross over a little bridge, make a turn. The road keeps going up in the hills. And sure, lo and behold, that house, when I got out and parked and walked it, that house was a tight little steep driveway that went up, and there it sat. And it was gorgeous. As soon as I saw it, I could tell from the window, I go, that's our house. And a lesson learned there is when you're scouting, in the car, the way that the nature of that hill was, my front hood would kind of block the view, and it's a sharp right-hand turn, so you're looking to the right. When you come down the hill, it was so steep, you kind of lose the view of the driveway going even opposite directions. You really can't see the house unless you're on foot. So I got out, and I'm like, this house, I guarantee you this house is going to work. Nice little older couple. We're backing out the driveway to go to church, a little Lithuanian church around the corner. I tell them what I'm doing. Nicest people in the world. They're not interested.
Oh, no.
So I said, at least can I come back tomorrow morning? Because I guess they had a bad experience with a commercial or something in the past. Okay, I said, can I come back tomorrow morning? I said, whatever it'll take to make you happy. If this house works inside, can I at least look at it? They said yes. I go back. I called the location manager and I said, I think that we found this house. I go back the next morning. Long story short, we filmed there. Okay, first location for the whole production. We started there. It was a challenge to park. It was right on a bend on a hillside, very, very busy street. And, but we made it work. We had it like 2 weeks of prep because it was first Grip and Electric and got a lot of their stuff in 2 days before. They were to come in and start doing pre-staging of equipment. So we didn't have to take all the trucks there on the first day. The couple got a lot of money. They went and stayed down at their local church, pocketed it. We made a lot of big changes. It was mostly a kitchen, living room area. We didn't go venture too much else in the house. We actually built the bathroom. We built the bedroom, bathroom on stage. But when they said yes, they wanted to start prepping like next week. It went all the way down to the wire. So that happens. Yes, usually you don't stretch it up so close, the starting gun, but we did it in that instant. It was very gratifying. The director loved it. But yeah, that stuff happens. That's one of them. There's been some other stuff, but that was the first one that came to mind. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we got to wrap it up here in just a few minutes, but we do have one more question from chat. What is something that you look forward to the most at the beginning of each show, and is there something about the position or your job that you least look forward to?
What I look forward to most, every show I go to, is who am I going to know on the set? Who do I know? I go around to the production office, and it's you do this enough, inevitably there's going to be one or two people or more that you've worked with in the past. First place I go to is the art department, and I look forward to most to who's in the art department, who's in transportation department. Transportation locations are completely intertwined as a department in terms of helping each other out. Have I worked with transportation? Have I worked with the art department? Those are the two departments that I look forward to the most. And then secondly, what was the second part of that question?
What's the thing you least look forward to?
Thing I least look forward to is probably tech scouts. When we go out with everybody, it's a huge rush. You go from location to location, everybody's rushed. You can't generate all the information you need to generate. Putting the tech scout books together, it's just stressful. And you have to find a restaurant. The location department has to find restaurants where we go eat. We take a lunch for all these people. That always works out. But for some reason, I think most locational people tell you, we all hate tech scouts. But I think everybody on a tech scout, even all the departments hate tech scouts. They're crammed up in a van. They got to go to the bathroom. The vans can't stop for another 15 miles. All that kind of stuff. You go into a home. As soon as you walk into somebody's nice home, somebody's in, where's the bathroom? I go to the bathroom right away. Can we use your bathroom? And it's so invasive.
Yeah.
But it kind of has to be done. But I don't like tech scouts at all, but they're important.
Cool. Well, I think that'll about do it. We're about out of time. So, Marc, thank you so much for joining us. It was a ton of fun. Is there anything you'd like to end with? Anything you'd like to say at the end?
I would say, whatever it is, if you have a feeling of whatever it is you want to do, you need to latch onto it. Don't let anything discourage you. Go for it. I think it's a fantastic industry. From all the benefits that it has, you can go in early in life and stay in it till you're 75, 70, 60s, maybe 80. You can make a whole career out of it. The pay is good. There's a lot of rewards to it. Some people find it glamorous. Sometimes it is. It usually isn't when you see kind of the flip side to it, but it's still more interesting than most of the jobs I hear about when I'm flying on a plane and the two people are sitting on the seat in front of me and the guy's telling the girl what he does for a living, and I'm thinking, thank goodness I do what I do. He sounds like he's got the most boring job in the world.
Awesome. All right. Well, Marc, thank you so much for joining us. Danny, thank you for being my co-host this time. And that'll do it for us. Next week we have Luke Wattell coming up, and he is works in the AD department. We should be filming that on Monday at let's see, Monday. Well, you guys can figure out the dates. The Monday after this one. We should be filming that on Monday at 10:30 in the morning. So keep an eye on Twitter just in case that changes. Facebook too. Make sure you follow us on Twitter if you want to stay up to date. But this has been The False Takes, and it is a show about art, film, and the mistakes we all make along the path to creating something new. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we will see you next time.